Have you ever felt like you're just constantly pushing a boulder uphill? You fight to be heard, you argue your case, and you demand that life finally give you what you've been asking for. And at the end of all that pushing, how do you feel? Usually you're just drained, stressed out, and a lot of the time still completely unheard. It's a frustrating, exhausting cycle. The very act of fighting for control leaves you feeling powerless and steals your peace. But what if I told you the real power isn't in demanding more? What if the ultimate power move is actually to demand less? I know it sounds like a total contradiction. We're taught that power means asserting ourselves, holding on tighter and never backing down. But that definition of power? It's a trap. It leads to burnout and anxiety, not strength. Today, we're going to unravel this paradox by exploring an ancient Buddhist principle that flips the script. It reveals how intentionally letting go of demands, arguments, and complaints actually gives you more control, not less. By the end of this, you'll see why surrendering your need to control everything is the most profound way to reclaim your inner peace and personal authority. You'll understand why, in a world that never stops shouting, the quiet power of non-attachment is the voice that truly matters. So, let's be honest about why we get caught in this trap in the first place. Why do we feel this obsessive need to demand, to argue, to control? It almost always comes from a place of fear. Fear of not getting what we need, fear of being overlooked, or fear of losing what we have. Control feels like our only shield against the chaos of life. We think if we just plan perfectly enough, or argue persuasively enough, we can force the world to bend to our will and protect ourselves from pain. This idea is everywhere in our culture, which often confuses power with dominance. We see it in business, in politics, and even in our own relationships. The message is clear. If you want something, go take it. Be loud. Be relentless. But what's the hidden cost of this constant battle? It's a tax on your energy and your spirit. Every argument you jump into, every complaint you voice, every time you mentally fight with reality, you're spending your precious vitality. This constant effort creates a state of non-stop tension, feeding a cycle of stress and anxiety that can feel impossible to break. The more you try to control things, the more you become a puppet to your own fears. And here's the great paradox. The more we try to manage every little detail, the more out of control we actually feel. Trying to control the uncontrollable is like trying to hold water in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. You're left with nothing but a tense hand and that lingering feeling of failure. This struggle isn't strength, it's a recipe for exhaustion. The truth is, people who rely on control to feel powerful are often the most fragile, because their peace depends entirely on the outside world lining up perfectly with their wishes. If tightening our grip only makes us weaker, where do we find real strength? The answer lies in an ancient path, one that's been taught for over 2,000 years in Buddhist philosophy. This path teaches that true power is found not in grasping, but in releasing. Now, when we talk about demanding less, it's easy to get the wrong idea. This isn't about becoming a passive doormat or giving up on your goals. Buddhist non-attachment is not apathy. It's a conscious, strategic release from clinging to specific outcomes. It's the powerful choice to untie your happiness from things you were never meant to control in the first place. This is a higher form of strength, a wisdom that recognizes that most of our suffering doesn't come from what happens to us, but from our resistance to what happens. The Buddha taught that attachment, or tanha, that intense craving for things to be a certain way, is the root of all our misery. Our demands are just a modern version of this. We attach our peace of mind to a condition. My boss has to respect me, or this situation must be fixed now. When reality doesn't obey our commands, we suffer. The Buddhist path offers a way out. It's about cultivating an inner power that doesn't depend on external conditions. This power is built on 4 profound pillars: the power of mindfulness, the power of non-attachment, the power of impermanence, and the power of stillness. By understanding these, we can shift from a posture of force to a posture of flow, and discover a strength we never knew we had. The first pillar is mindfulness. At its heart, mindfulness is simply paying attention to the present moment, your thoughts, feelings, and body, without judging them. You become an impartial observer of your own mind. Imagine your mind as a jar of water filled with dirt. When you're lost in demands and frustrations, it's like shaking that jar. The water gets murky and you can't see clearly. You react impulsively, driven by the storm inside. Mindfulness is the act of setting the jar down and letting the dirt settle. As it does, the water clears. From this place of clarity, you can see your thoughts and feelings for what they are, temporary events passing through you. A demand pops up. "This isn't fair!" Anger flares. The unmindful response is to grab onto that anger and act, to complain, argue, or fight. The mindful response is to simply notice it, to say to yourself, there's a thought about unfairness. There's a feeling of anger. This simple act of observation creates a tiny gap between a trigger and your response. In that gap lies your freedom and your power. You are no longer a puppet of your passing emotions. And it's not just ancient wisdom. Modern psychology confirms that mindfulness practices directly improve our ability to regulate our emotions and reduce stress. A powerful tool for this is the STOP technique. When you feel yourself getting pulled into a reaction, just stop. Take a breath, a few deep, conscious ones. This helps calm your nervous system. Observe. Notice what's happening inside you. What thoughts are there? What emotions? Where do you feel them in your body? Then, proceed. With this new awareness, you can choose how to respond, instead of just reacting on autopilot. By practicing mindfulness, you stop feeding your demands with reactive energy. You learn to watch them come and go without getting swept away. This is the foundation of self-mastery. The second pillar is the profound principle of non-attachment. Again, this isn't indifference. It's the wisdom to live your life fully, to have goals, to love people, but without clinging to them as the source of your happiness. It's about shifting the energy of what you do, focusing on the process rather than desperately needing one specific outcome. Imagine you're in a tug of war. On the other end of the rope is your demand, and you're pulling with all your might. You believe winning is the only way to be happy, but the struggle is wearing you out. Non-attachment is the realization that you have the power to simply let go of the rope. When you let go, you might not win the argument in the way your ego wanted, but suddenly you're free. You've reclaimed all the energy you were wasting in the struggle. This is the essence of non-attachment. Our suffering comes from the illusion that our happiness is over there, waiting for us once we get what we want. Buddhism teaches that lasting peace can only be found within. By practicing non-attachment, you stop outsourcing your happiness to things you can't control. This doesn't mean you don't communicate your needs or strive for better situations. It means you do so from a place of wholeness, not desperation. You state your preference, you take skillful action, and then you release your rigid attachment to the result. You find peace in your effort, not just in the outcome. When you release the demand, your inner calm is no longer held hostage. This is a radical shift in power, from seeking it outside to building it inside. If this is making sense to you, and you're feeling ready to trade the stress of demanding for the peace of letting go, take a moment to subscribe. We regularly explore ancient wisdom for modern life, and we'd love for you to be part of the journey. The third pillar is the liberating truth of impermanence, or anicca. This is the fundamental teaching that everything is in a constant state of change. Nothing is permanent. Not this moment, not your feelings, not the situation causing you stress. At first, that might sound scary, but it's actually a source of incredible freedom. Think of life as a river. Your demands are like trying to build a dam to stop the flow. It's an exhausting and pointless fight against the nature of reality. The real power move isn't to fight the current, but to learn how to navigate it, to get in your canoe and steer skillfully, all while trusting the river is moving. When you're stuck in a frustrating situation, remember this wisdom. This too shall pass. The difficult emotion you feel will change. The circumstances will change. Deeply understanding this allows you to stop resisting what is. Accepting impermanence doesn't mean you approve of a bad situation. It just means you acknowledge its reality without wasting energy fighting it in this moment. Demanding that a situation be different is just arguing with reality. Trusting in impermanence allows you to save that energy. You realize your frantic efforts are often unnecessary because the universe is already in the process of rearranging itself. By letting go of your rigid demands, you align yourself with the natural flow of life, and that alignment is a position of immense power and peace. The final pillar brings these ideas into your daily communication, the power of stillness and silence. In a world this noisy, we assume the loudest voice wins, but wisdom from both Buddhist philosophy and thinkers like Robert Greene suggests the opposite is often true. As Greene's fourth law of power puts it, always say less than necessary. Powerful people often impress and intimidate by saying less. Their silence has weight. When they finally speak, people listen, because their words are chosen with intention, not spilled out in a reactive flood. People who talk constantly often signal a lack of self-control. If they can't control their own words, how can they control anything else? Think about your last heated argument. What might have happened if, instead of firing back, you had simply held a calm, intentional silence? Silence is a power tool. First, it stops you from saying something you'll regret. Second, it often makes the other person uncomfortable, prompting them to keep talking and reveal more about what they're really thinking. This isn't about giving someone the silent treatment to punish them. That's manipulation. This is a strategic, mindful pause. It's non-reactivity in action. It communicates that you are grounded and in control of yourself, even if you can't control the situation. Demanding less also means speaking less. By mastering the art of the pause, you give your words scarcity and therefore value. You opt out of pointless battles and cultivate an aura of calm authority. Your quiet presence becomes far more powerful than the loudest demand. When you start to bring these 4 pillars into your life, a huge shift happens. That constant, low-level buzz of anxiety begins to fade. That feeling of being a warrior, always braced for the next fight, is replaced by a sense of lightness and resilience. You'll find your relationships improve too. When you stop demanding that people be a certain way, you give them the space to be who they are. This releases a massive amount of pressure from your interactions. You move from a place of conflict to one of connection. Your presence becomes a source of calm for others, not tension. Most importantly, you discover a new kind of power. It's not the brittle power that depends on getting your way. It is a deep, unshakable power that comes from within. It's the freedom of knowing that your peace isn't dependent on the world outside, but is generated by the wisdom inside. You stop being a victim of life's currents and become a skillful navigator. That is the freedom and the power of demanding less. If this video gave you a new perspective, please give it a like to help this message reach others. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and hit the notification bell to continue exploring these ideas with us. Thanks for watching.